Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, Hour of Devastation just came out this past weekend. Did you had a pre-release?
I did not pre-release directly, although I guess I did. I did go to a pre-release, but swung by fabulous RIW Hobbies for a few minutes. Didn't have time to actually battle, do any gaming, but saw lots of people, lots of misers playing some Hour of Devastation events, having a really good time.
I actually played in a pre-release, which is the first time for me in a long time. It was like a bizarro pre-release. The youngest in New York City, a store called The Complete Strategist. Bizarro, the youngest person at pre-release. This is like a full pre-release, not like 6 people showed up. The youngest person in the room was Matt Ferrando, who is 26.
The youngest.
He was the youngest player in the pre-release, 26 years old, right? And I mean, it was like certainly this pre-release was a tougher tournament to win than the vast majority of PPTQs. It was crazy. It was like all these players I hadn't seen in forever, like Scott McCord, who's a Pro Tour Top 4 competitor, Andy Longo, who's a Grand Prix champion. It was all mostly guys in their 30s and 40s. It was like
one of those super high elo pre-releases. Like it's just,
it was crazy.
Seems intense.
I don't know if half the room had Pro Tour experience, but I wouldn't be surprised. And like it was just, I'm like, what? So like, BDM got me to play in this pre-release, and then he played against me first round and destroyed me. And it was like it was all a con, all a con to get my pack.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it was super fun. I went 1-3, but I was so inspired by the cards that were actually in my pool. I mean, there's so many cool things.
A little above expectation.
Yeah, a little bit. I accidentally won the 4th round. That wasn't according.
Did you get the bye?
Nope. Battled.
Nice. Okay.
I mean, I was able to overcome another 0-3 opponent. Yeah, it was a tough day. Tough day in round 4.
Well, dude, there's so many Hour of Devastation cards to take a look at. Like, dude, where do you want to start?
There are actually. I want to talk about some beatdown cards if we can. We haven't talked about any beaters. Not none, but like really like just straightforward get in there kind of stuff. You
got your eye on something?
A couple of cards actually. What do you think about Resilient Khenra, 1 and a G for a creature Jackal Wizard? He's a 2/2 for 2, so he's Grizzly Bears, right? But when Resilient Khenra enters the battlefield, you may have target creature get +X until end of turn, where X is Resilient Khenra's power. So it's a 2/2 base, right? So theoretically, if you had a guy, maybe played a 1-drop, you could play Resilient Khenra and then get in like for additional 2, and it leaves a body. But that's not all. It also has Eternalize for 4 GG. So later in the game, you can buy it back from the graveyard for 6 mana, get a 4/4, and of course, it would have the same trigger, right? So when the Eternalized token version of Resilient Khenra came into the battlefield, it would give +4/+4 instead of +2/+2.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you think about this guy? It seems pretty cool to me. I think I'd think about it at least even without the Eternalize.
The fact that it's so even without the Eternalize, it's at least somewhat comparable to a 2/2 haste for 2. Now, a 2/2 haste for 2 isn't the greatest deal in the world, but it's not embarrassing, right? Like that's like, it's not quite there, but it's like relatively close, right?
Yeah.
And on this one, you have to do a little bit of work, so it's not just so easy as a 2/2 haste, but like, you have to have a target, But
you actually don't necessarily have to have a target, right? You could play Resilient Khenra and give itself +2/+2, right? And I know that sounds kind of silly because it doesn't have haste to start, but you could, for example, crew a heart with it, right? If that was your only thing you could do.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But, like, all I'm saying is that right off the top, it's like a 2/2 haste, but you also, in addition to having to do that little bit of work, you have the upside of getting a multiplier whenever you pump something with lifelink, if you pump something with double strike, specifically Adorn Pouncer, Like all these things are ways in which you're getting a good multiplier on your Resilient Khenra. If you had Infect, anything like that. But if you had a Flyer even or something unblockable, the fact though that it actually does have Eternalize is a pretty appealing component of the card, particularly since the Eternalize is set up to curve perfectly Adorn Pouncer on 5, Resilient Khenra on 6.
Ooh.
And then that's game.
That's I think it's interesting where we have these creatures like Adorn Pouncer and the Khenra that they're like okay front side, right? Like you said, it's not embarrassing front side.
Yeah.
But then
not only are they okay front side, they work well together front side.
Yeah. But that when you have them, like, what's the knock against these kind of decks? Oftentimes, you throw out all your hand. You can clear your hand quickly, but then maybe you're very soft to like one or two sweepers, or your opponent stops your stuff, or they have real efficient removal cards or slightly bigger creatures. It's gonna, the party's over. But these cards give you some card advantage possibility and some lasting power, right? Or they give you another way to go if you get flooded, right? Like if you're a 1-drop, 2-drop deck, the worst thing in the world for you is to just draw too many lands. This actually builds in a way to, get a little bit back for specifically the worst thing that could happen to, theoretically these kinds of cards.
Yeah, having an extra way to put your mana to good use can actually really help a lot, particularly for the color combinations that don't have access to creature lands like Shambling Vent. Like if you're playing one of the color combinations that, one of the enemy color combinations, so to speak, you can sink your mana a little bit more reliably into those creature lands as a way to kind of convert them into an advantage, but the same is not true for the ally color combinations. So for instance, if you're playing a green-white deck, such as a deck with Resilient Khenra and Adorn Pouncer, it's really nice having a way to spend your mana profitably to turn that extra land, being able to afford to play enough land to hit your land drops while still having a plan for if you happen to be on the high side of your distribution.
Yep. Yeah, so what do you think about this guy? Think he's going to see some play?
Yeah, I mean, he could be okay. He's, I haven't seen yet the spot that just makes it the perfect home yet. I think he's the type of card that could change in value as new cards are printed by a fair bit. There's something to some kind of a Dredge Vine-esque strategy and whatnot. But at the moment, he kind of looks like he gets the worst of it against Magma Spray.
Yeah, that's true.
And the work you have to do to really get your money's worth, because you're going to have to get your money's worth compared to just like if you want to use this instead of any other amazing 2-drop. Like every Resilient Khenra could be a Noose Constrictor, it could be a Sylvan Advocate, it could be a Duskwatch Recruiter. The competition is so steep. So
I was thinking about that, unrelated topic. What happened? I mean, Duskwatch Recruiter we haven't seen crack a top 8 in a year, but I was just wondering what happened to Sylvan Advocate. That guy used to be so highly regarded at the 2. It's like the fourth most. It's like the fourth most popular, option for a deck that can cast it now. Like it's.
Well, I think Fatal Push is actually subtly a big part of it. Obviously, Fatal Push would kill out other 2-drops also, but the reason it's so important against Sylvan Advocate is that Sylvan Advocate's jam was how much it dominated the other 2s. And it dominated the 1s. But with Fatal Push, that's no longer the same, that's not a reliable play in the same way. Whereas, some of the other 2s, Fatal Push isn't as big of a deal because if they were going to die to a removal spell, they were going to die to whatever.
Yep.
Like a shock kills a lot of things. Doesn't kill a Sylvan Advocate. Fatal Push does, though.
So, but Resilient Khenra, this guy is a beat down card, right? Like a lot of these other cards from, Noose Constrictor or Sylvan Advocate, they can be played in a bunch of different places. Like Resilient Khenra is getting played in a deck that wants to attack, I think.
Yeah, the place I go to, besides stuff like Double Strike with Adorn Pouncer, which I really do think that is an interesting little way to kind of do it. But outside of that, I think that Resilient Khenra it's kind of a nice pairing with Lambholt Pacifist. Like I think that
turn it on.
Yeah, just having more ways. It's nice when you can power up your Lambholt Pacifist with if you just have Resilient Khenra, Rishkar Pima Renegade, Gideon, or whatever, right? Like you don't even necessarily, and maybe it's not even white. Maybe you're playing some kind of a Lambholt Pacifist deck that uses, like the Green God, and like green red with the Green God, and maybe Voltaic Brawler or whatever. I would Resilient Khenra Pummeler.
Oh, sure.
Any of that stuff,
It's costed pretty comparably to a pump spell, actually. I guess the 2/2 body isn't that important, but it's, it is something.
Well, it's something, definitely. But
you also get like double bonuses if you're playing Always Watching, right? Like if there's Always Watching in play already, and you play the Resilient Khenra, then you get +3/+3/+5/+5, which is something, I think.
Not +5/+5. You only get +4/+4 on the backside. Since Always Watching only powers up non-tokens.
Oh, you're right.
It counts as a token.
Well, +3/+3 on the front side anyway.
I think Resilient Khenra, it challenges the amount of competition it's facing, but I think that it's also interesting to consider if there's some sort of a appeal to authority approach. Appeal to authority, I'm actually really excited about Appeal to Authority. It's a different kind of card than is usually good, but I think that it's like a weirdly powerful card. That's that green sorcery. Until end of turn, target creature gets trample and +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. And then authority is 1 and a white sorcery, Aftermath. Tap up to 2 target creatures. Your opponent's basically tap up to 2 target creatures, and creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn.
Yeah, I like the authority side. It reminds me of that card that Hayne used to win his Pro Tour, right? The tap 2 cards with flashback tap 2 cards.
Right. Yeah, you get the flashback of tap 2, but the fact that you also give your creatures vigilance is kind of sweet.
Yeah.
And then
it's easy to cast both sides too, right? In a single turn. It's only 3.
Oh, and it's actually a fantastic combination because when you cast both sides in a single turn, you're adding a huge amount of damage for a very small amount of mana. And if you can also remove the blockers, I mean, Appeal to Authority is all about being a giant kill. I mean, I think this is a Tarka's command. Like, Appeal to Authority it's going to surprise you how often this card is 8 damage. This is a Tarka's command, man. This is green-white Tarka's command. So, like, if you Appeal to Authority, and I'm not even talking about if you're doing some crazy stuff. Like, if you Appeal to Authority, Adorn Pouncer, you are doing it. Right? Like, that is an excellent interaction. And I think that that's at the heart of the cat synergies. I think that if cat aggro is going to show up, it's partly because of the strength of Appeal to Authority.
Well, half of the playable cats are token producers, right? From
even
to the new
Pride Sovereign cat. Even the Sacred Cat is effectively. I mean, it's a token maker. It is a token maker.
It's like 2 bodies for one card.
And some of the other cats have good synergy with this too, because, like, for instance, giving your guy trample, sometimes you're going to do a little value appeal. Like, if you appeal Authority a Long Tusk Cub, that's pretty good.
Get the trigger, yeah.
Right, and then the first time makes it easier to start hitting the future ones. Or if you Appeal to Authority, obviously the Pouncer is just a fantastic finisher there. But if you Appeal to Authority or Pride Sovereign, sometimes you'll be in a spot where you have a bunch of 1/1s, and you have a single, 7/7 Pride Sovereign. If you Appeal to Authority or Pride Sovereign, well, boom, suddenly it's a 12/12 now, and if you give that trample, you only have to give the 1 trample, or if you Appeal to Authority on the 3/1, and I don't know that you're actually going to end up wanting to use that 3/1, the Initiate's Companion, but it's 1 and a green for a 3/1 Then if it does damage to the combat damage to the enemy player, you get to untap one of your permanents, right? So if you initiate's companion, one of the cool combos you can do is you can initiate's companion to untap your Pride Sovereign and just make lots of extra cats, right? Like, that's a pretty good combo.
I like that guy a lot just because he's reasonably mana costed for his power and he can crew a heart.
Right, and if you Pride Sovereign with as an accelerator, you can actually power down, get some of your, like, play a turn 3 Gideon or a turn 4 Regal Caracal or something. But if you appeal to authority, sometimes appeal to authority is going to be kind of sick on that guy. It sounds funny, but like, if you get that guy through, getting to untap, that could be the difference. Now it's like your appeal to authority was free if you have something post-combat you need to play. So I don't know.
I think this card's really strong. I agree with you.
And there's tons of lifelinkers in that deck, too. I mean, lifelink's a great thing to get a multiplier on,
What's the worst case
one
scenario?
mana.
+1/+1 on a single creature. It still could be good enough, right?
I think the worst case scenario, I can imagine much worse. Like, for instance, dying and going to hell, and it turns out hell is real, and also, all of your family, you watch them all suffer, and then it turns out that actually none of them were ever real, and that you're actually just alone in the universe. That would be much worse.
Or not even having the G to cast appeal might be bad.
That's even worse.
That's really bad.
So appeal to authority, I think the key is that appeal for 1 mana is already just so much. It's so reasonable for a token deck to be getting way more than 3 extra damage because of appeal. And that's not even counting authority, So remember, the vigilance is extra important. If you give vigilance to Pride Sovereign, that's big, right? Both in terms of getting to attack and make tokens, but also in terms of being able to not even have to make the tokens beforehand, because it could potentially block. You can attack with the Pride Sovereign with vigilance, and then threaten to block and make tokens on your opponent's turn. And then also, of course, giving your guys vigilance is excellent when you have all these lifelinkers if you're in some kind of a racing situation.
Sure.
So, I don't know. I think appeal to authority that's a good one. Plus, you can just flip it. Like, what if you're just dredging, right? Like, being able to dredge up some, like, ways to tap down the blockers is, like, great.
I agree. So, I have another kind of beater to talk about. It's less exciting than appeal to authority, but I think it's going to be pretty good. Its name is, it's a black creature. It's called Amit Eternal. 2 and a B for a 5/5, and it's a zombie crocodile demon. It looks to me like a Power Rangers character or something. Like it's like a crocodile wearing clothes. It's got a ton of abilities. Afflict 3. So whenever this creature becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. And it has, whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a -1/-1 counter on Amit Eternal. But it also has, when Amit Eternal deals combat damage to a player, remove all -1/-1 counters from it. What do you think about Amit Eternal?
I'm not that into it.
No?
No. Yeah, I'm not that into it. You into it pretty big?
I think that it's got some applications. So hear me out on this one. First of all, it's got it's a little negatory, right? So 5/5 for 3. That's the classic negator numbers, and it's got some negator disadvantage to it, but not nearly as bad. I think, generally speaking, the reason I think this card is pretty good is you could play it in certain spots. It can be like your Tarmogoyf in a discard deck, where if you just clear the opponent's hand and then play it, they can't really get the -1/-1 counters on you very well. But separately, because it has Afflict 3, I think it's going to be good at fighting against, token decks. So, just, they can't just keep chumping it.
Right, I mean, they can still triple block it or something.
Yeah.
They only lose 3. But
they'll... it's not like they can just keep dragging it out. That's all. Forever.
I don't know. When I see this thing, I think it's actually a fairly fancy. I don't know. I think I would want to see. I'm skeptical of how reliable it is. It might be awesome. It might be completely sick. It's obviously a weird enough card. It's hard to be sure of the evaluation. I do think it's a really sweet combo with like Nest of Scarabs, though. Like whenever you put a -1/-1 counter on a creature, get a 1/1 Scarab. Mm-hmm. The fact that Amid Eternal is you putting -1/-1 counters on it makes it so that every time your opponent casts a spell, you're getting a 1/1. That's actually pretty sweet, turning the drawback into upside in that way, you know?
Yeah, how much does Nest of Scarabs cost?
2 and a black.
So would you typically play it first or second?
It would depend on the rest of the deck. In general, though, I would play Amid Eternal first.
Yeah, okay.
But it would depend. It would really depend. Another possible combo that I don't think is going to be good enough, but it's possible. If you use Solemnity, if you have Solemnity, then this guy's just a 5/5 with upside.
Yep.
It's 5/5 afflict 3.
Because you can't put counters on it.
Right. But lots of things are different with Solemnity, so I don't know if that's alone enough. And it's another card that costs 3. But, I don't know. I'm an Eternal, I could believe it, but there's a lot of competition at 3, and this guy just doesn't do enough that I'm in the market for yet. I could be convinced, though.
Okay, so earlier you talked about maybe a 2/2 for 2 with haste. In the company of the beaters for this set, there is a card that's similar to that, right? So there is Earthshaker Khenra. That's 1 in a red for a creature, Jackal Warrior. He's 2/1 with haste, but he has a bunch of other abilities. When Earthshaker Khenra enters the battlefield, target creature with power less than or equal to Earthshaker Khenra's power can't block this turn. So it has a haste and 2 power for 2 mana and a little bit of an evasion ability. But wait, there's more. It also has Eternalize for 4 RR. So one of the things that's really predictable when you're playing with a 2/1 kind of aggro-y card is that it will die, or have a reasonably good chance of dying. I think that the Eternalize is really well placed here because it's also got the haste, right?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Am I weird? I don't know that I'm that into this guy either.
I'm pretty into this guy.
Yeah?
You mean you don't have to be into it, but I think it's pretty good.
I could be into it. Are you talking about like in a mono red deck?
I don't know. I think there's maybe there's a green red deck. I don't think necessarily a mono red deck in standard. I'm not sure if there's enough cards to play, but maybe a black red deck, something like that. Maybe a green red, maybe a white red.
I do think this guy is a fun one to play pump spells on. Like when you give this guy you play a 1 or 2 cost pump spell. He's got haste anyway, but when you give him +3 and suddenly in response to his, no, I guess that doesn't work though. No, yeah, I don't know. Okay, surely you're not in for a 2/1 haste for 2, right? That's not enough, right?
No, it's not enough. But it's got some other stuff, right? It can potentially get in the first turn you play it, and then it has the Eternalize.
Well, it's the being able to remove a 1 or 2 power guy. It's from blocking this turn. It's that's something. That's enough that I think I'm into it for mono red. But I mean, maybe it's enough. Maybe I don't know. I wonder if there's going to... I mean, maybe this is part of how you grind through the counter spells and stuff.
It seems like an odd sideboard card to me, though.
No. You play it main deck, I'm saying. I just think that Torrential Gearhulk is going to warp the format more. I mean, the whole banning of Aether Works Marvel and the printing of, some cards like Supreme Will and whatnot. It's Yeah, I don't know. This guy could be okay. He's fine. He's just like all the other red 2-drops of sorts. I mean, there's been a shortage, and so I think this guy's got some purpose there. I suspect that the green 2-drops might be better if you're playing red-green. But if you're playing mono-red, I think this guy should be right up your alley. Yeah, he's fine, It's just not so much that it's got me like, oh, yes, I need to start playing mono-red now.
Oh, I can understand the sentiment of not necessarily wanting to play mono-red right now.
It's fine. I'm interested. It's just what's the other burn spell? I mean, why are we mono-red? Like, there's just such good incentives to play 2 colors. It's not a beatdown card, man, but there's one card that's burning a hole in my pocket.
What is it?
We talked about it a little bit, but De Jiro with eyes open.
Oh yeah, I thought you were naming a red card because of your burning comment. But instead you're naming a white creature. So 3 WW for a legendary creature, human warrior. De Jiro with eyes open is a 4/3 with vigilance. When De Jiro with eyes open enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a planeswalker card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. If a source would deal damage to a planeswalker you control, prevent 1 of that damage.
So this guy, obviously the straightforward combination is this with Liliana, Death's Majesty, being able to threaten to get it back. Like, that's a pretty sick 1-2 punch, right? Like, you De Jiro with eyes wide open, and then when you go get Liliana, if they kill De Jiro, you can just get De Jiro back and keep going, right? But if they don't kill De Jiro makes it very, very hard for them to kill Liliana, particularly when you're plussing.
Well, I think that just to begin with, this meets like the Mike Flores minimum standards for like a 5-drop, right? It's got 4 power, and it goes and gets a little something card advantageous. So it's like pretty good from that perspective. Separately, I think that the damage prevention clause on this card has a huge amount of potential upside, right? Like, I think that there's just going to be decks that can't damage Liliana or whatever planeswalker Dovin that he got anymore.
Yeah, it's important to note this isn't just preventing 1 damage per turn; it's 1 damage per source.
Yeah, if they have like 400 1/1 tokens, they're not gonna damage your planeswalker that way.
Right. That's really big. And the Planeswalkers actually have an excellent toolbox in front of them. I mean, the first copy of Sorin Grim Nemesis goes so far, right? And the Liliana, The Last Hope, is really great for getting De Jiro back as well.
Yeah.
And the prospect of being able to get the appropriate Planeswalker for certain problems, all that's really exciting. But there's another application that I'm kind of really into, which is picture this is a different deck, a Jeskai deck. De Jiro with eyes open, go get Saheeli Rai.
Okay.
Now, just because Felidar Guardian is banned doesn't mean you can't play Saheeli Rai. Saheeli Rai comes down and immediately makes a copy of De Jiro with eyes open. You're not like doing some crazy infinite loop or something immediately, but that's like they don't even have to kill De Jiro for you to have the ability to start tutoring up more pieces, more whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, you could play De Jiro in like a green-white deck, for example, with Oath of Nissa, which would allow you to cast any planeswalkers you wanted. And also, it could just dig for your first De Jiro. But you could play, 1 copy of a bunch of different planeswalkers, or like 4 copies, or more than 1 copies of some of the ones you wanted. For example, I was thinking Nicol Bolas, because the Oath makes it easy for you to cast Nicol Bolas, regardless of what lands you actually have. And then, De Jiro is just a tutor for you.
Yeah, I mean, we already saw Chandra, Raph Levy, Hall of Famer Raph Levy, who's right about, actually, this next Pro Tour in a couple weeks is his 100th Pro Tour. That's pretty sick. Shout out to Raph.
That's awesome.
But Raph busting out the Chandra in a straight green-white deck just powered by Oath of Nisses.
Yeah, to win the Grand Prix.
Yeah, so maybe Nico Bolas could have a similar job, particularly if you only had to play one copy, because DeGiro with Eyes Open can go get it when you actually have the Oath of Nissa.
Yeah, I think this card is currently being underrated by folks because they don't initially realize the Indrik Stomp Howlerness to it.
That's the wrong branding. I think you got to describe it as they don't realize the Goblin Dark Dweller.
All right, we'll go with Goblin Dark Dweller then.
So here's a little I guess sequence that only Mike Flores could love. Thalia's Lancers go get DeGiro with Eyes Open. I thought you would like that.
Oh, I love it. He's legendary.
Yeah. I think that the first DeGiro is like a natural inclusion for your Thalia's Lancers decks. And that's if you end up keeping any Thalia's Lancers in your Thalia's Lancers decks.
Do you think that... No, this guy's not superior to Thalia's Lancer, is he?
He's not strictly superior.
No, he's...
By any means. He's a much better card, I think, though. He's in a different tier. I don't think they're actually in the same league. I think Thalia's Lancers is, like, solid, whereas DeGiro with Eyes Open is actively good.
Right.
What do you think about DeGiro with Eyes Open in an Eldrazi Displacer deck?
Oh, well, what do you think I think? Like, it sounds phenomenal. Like, if you untuck... You can just play DeGiro, right? 5 mana, go get whatever. Add your 6th mana, play Eldrazi Displacer. You're in pretty good spot, I think.
Well, so, you know these... you remember all those white-black mid-range decks with all the Planeswalkers? And they always struggled to come up with some creatures, right? Like, it was always like, we really should come up with a few creatures because we want to have something to get back with, like, Liliana the Last Hope or Liliana Dust Majesty or whatever, right? Well, DeGiro with Eyes Open is, like, that is what those people
stepping
want.
up.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what they're looking for. The ability to get out Nyxelis or Sorin or Gideon or Liliana, whatever, right? Like, that's excellent. Even having one Gideon of the Trials as a additional avenue, it's like that's so exactly what they want.
Well, if you've got like a demonic tutor, you know, your calculations for a certain number of copies of the cards in your deck have got to fundamentally change, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's more, the Eldrazi Displacer has a whole new lease on life because of the printing of Ifnir Deadlands and the white one, Sheffet Dunes. Sheffet Dunes and Ifnir Deadlands are 2 of the 5 deserts that do pain to you and have spell-like abilities. The fact that you can, like, put 8 colorless sources in your deck in place of 4 swamps and 4 plains, that's just night and day for being able to support Eldrazi Displacer. And you don't even necessarily have to play 8 of those, you know? But between Ifnir Deadlands, Sheffet Dunes, Aether Hub, and then the possibility of miscellaneous other lands, there's, like, actually no problem at all supporting Eldrazi Displacer in 1 or 2 color decks.
I think I'm a little hesitant to 2 color decks off the top of my head, but I'll take it under advisement. I think that combination is really powerful, no matter what you want to say.
In particular, I think that the +1/+1 from the white one is being very underestimated by people. Sheffet Dunes is a Gideon emblem in the chamber.
Yeah,
it's to be able to get out of your land an extra anthem is such a different dynamic for decks. Like, for instance, picture a green-white token deck with Hour of Promise, Gideon, Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. Like, you're playing lots of token stuff, right?
Yep.
But then Sheffet Dunes means you've just got extra anthems in your land.
I tested New Standard a lot this weekend. You know what card I was shocked by how relevant it was. I had 1 copy of Ipnu Rivulet in my deck. I was at the time playing a green-blue Hour of Promise deck. Ipnu Rivulet is the blue desert. It taps to add colorless to your mana pool. You can pay 1 life to add blue. but has the additional ability, 1 and a blue, sacrifice a desert. Target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So it mills for 4. Just like the ability to do that 1 or 2 times in a game, let me win millstone races with Ulamog that I would have just lost in beatdown. Separately, this is applicable for any of this desert cycle, though. I just sacrificed a desert at some point to get delirium, which was also useful. But just
well, this one gets you all the way too. The fact that you're milling 4, if you do it to yourself, like sometimes you're going to be like jumping several steps for delirium.
That's true.
And the fact that it's milling, if you're playing with enough Eternalize and, like the more Adorn Pouncer, Sacred Cat type folks, Honored Hydras you have, the more Ipnu Rivulet has chances of just being actual card advantage.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about doing it that way.
The Ipnu Rivulet also is it's a very niche strategy, but those like mono blue sanity grinding decks and whatnot?
Of course. From back in the day.
If Ipnu Rivulet is an auto include in those decks, right? But there's actually a few little twists here. First of all, they might be in the market for scavenger grounds. You want to have a desert to sack to Ipnu Rivulets anyway. And it's kind of nice having a built-in answer to things like Emrakul or whatever. Like just in case you're milling people and you're going to have to deal with the Eldrazi.
Sure.
But outside of all that stuff, the Ipnu Rivulet being able to mill, I'm not sure if it's going to end up fitting in the same way, but it's a thing to consider for that blue enchantment. It's a combo card.
The curse?
Fraying Sanity, 2 and a blue enchantment or a curse. At the beginning of each end step, both players, turns. At the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into that graveyard from anywhere this turn. So when you put down Fraying Sanity, every card that goes to your opponent's graveyard is going to later that turn into a bonus mill for that, And part of the joke is if you have a second Fraying Sanity, then the first one does 1 and the second one does 2 per card.
Yep.
Now, what I've seen a lot of people talking about Fraying Sanity with like just mills here and there. They're like, oh, sanity grinding or the archive trap, any of that stuff. Dude, I just want to cut out the middleman. Just Fraying Sanity and traumatize. That's it.
That's pretty much all of it, right?
That's Donate Illusions. Sort of. I mean, it's a 3 into a 5 instead of a 4 into a 3. But that's like pretty good. And you don't even have to deal with the whole them paying for a little while, which wasn't the biggest deal. But I think Fraying Sanity Traumatize is like a very legit combination to consider. There's lots of legit combos, but like that's an interesting one, right? Because that's a lot, right? Like that's just a 3 into 5 and you win. 2 card win the game. You're not buying it, huh?
No, but it's
really.
Yeah, I mean, just not for the formats that I normally focus on. How about that?
Okay, sure. What do you think about Banewhip Punisher? 2 and a black for a 2/2. When Banewhip Punisher enters the battlefield, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. You can pay a black and sacrifice Banewhip Punisher to destroy target creature that has a -1/-1 counter on it.
I think it's pretty cool. It's at 4 mana.
Yeah, I think it's nice.
I'm just saying at 4 mana.
It's got a great personality.
It just it kills anything, well, almost anything, and that's a cool far end for it to be at. I used cool again, but yeah, it's very flexible. I don't know. What do you think? What rises your hackles to my use of the word cool here?
Well, it's just cool isn't speaking to good. I think this card. Go ahead.
Oh, I think. Wait, so you were going to say you think this card's very good?
I think that there's some
really cool things you can do with Bane Whip Punisher.
Yeah, like kill their creatures. Well, like so. For one thing, I don't know how much this is going to come up because it has its own come into play trigger, but it can sacrifice to destroy a creature that has -1/-1 counter on it. It doesn't have to be the same creature that Bane Whip Punisher put a -1/-1 counter on, which I think is like a subtle thing, but important to note.
I also think that when you're talking about a 4-cost kill spell, that as the backstop, that's and you made that point, but that's a big thing. There's a real limit to the floor of this, because not only is the worst case it's a 4-cost kill spell, it's also worst case is that it's a threat. This is still a body, so like it can attack. And of course, this like butchers like anybody who's playing like 1 toughness creatures, right? Like the fact that it's such a powerful 2-for-1.
Mm-hmm.
But the real appeal to me about Bane Whip Punisher is its use alongside Grind to Dust, because Grind to Dust, now that is a card. 1 and a black sorcery. Put a -1/-1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And then it has Aftermath, 3 and a white. Exile any number of target creatures that have -1/-1 counters on them.
Yep. Yeah, it's potentially a sweeper on the front end and potentially a sweeper on the back end.
Grind to Dust, it's like... So... What's the floor here? Like 2 murders in 1 card? Like you can just kill 2 creatures, right? And that's if you have to actually try.
Yeah, I think this. I played against this card a couple of times in the pre-release. Actually, I thought it was very impressive. It felt really impressive, like because if you were like anywhere close to them on creature development, then they would just crush you with the front half, right? Like they can tip the scales.
This card reminds me a lot of Silence the Believers.
Yeah.
I just think that you're going to get into spots where on turn 6, you just go Grind to Dust, kill those 2 creatures. Exile those 2 creatures right there. Doesn't matter if it's the Scorpion God. Doesn't matter if it's a fully powered Sylvan Advocate. Whatever. And that's if you have to do it both ways. Like, imagine you play against somebody who's aggressive. Now, imagine if on turn 3, you had already marked something. You turned their...
I think that would be common, actually.
And this isn't... Remember, I think that it's easy to forget just how much Bane Whip Punisher can just do damage right up front. Like, if your opponent plays a turn 2 Walking Ballista, and you go Bane Whip Punisher it... That's nice.
Yeah, it's
right?
very nice.
Or if they play that Glint Sleeve Siphoner, and you Bane Whip Punish them, they're in trouble.
Yeah, like anyone plays Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
So I think that Bane Whip Punisher and Grind to Dust, the 2 of them together as a package deal. I don't know that you even have to get too much freakier into like other -1/-1 counter stuff beyond. I think that. It's not like a big ask to put If Near Dead lands in your deck, and possibly even Grasping Dunes. But I think If Near Dead lands is like an easy add. And even though like sometimes, If Near Dead lands very easy could actually just kill the creature outright. But there's going to be times where you're able to use If Near Dead lands or the threat of like being able to use If Near Dead lands to slow down and somebody, and then finish things off with the like that's just like a 3rd kill for the Grind to Dust.
Yeah, I just think that the If Near Dead lands seems like a lot of commitment to be slowing down these creatures using that land.
Well, I just don't think If Near Dead lands asks that much of you. Like, I think that you want to be using Eldrazi Displacer anyway. And Eldrazi Displacer, I mean, if nothing else, I'll just Eldrazi Displacer with Banewit Punisher and put counters on everything.
Yeah, that's actually the first thing that my mind went to. I think this would be probably very solid at that.
And I mean, I think that Lilianas are respectable things to use to get back a Banewit Punisher. Like, all I want is to Liliana back a kill spell. Are you kidding? You're not buying that one, huh?
I think that the cards both have good enough utility that if that comes up, more power to the person who's doing it. But that neither one of those cards is going to make the cut because of the interaction that you just stated. Where do you think you'd see the Punisher? I think that maybe black-white humans. Like maybe get some ways you could, more bonuses.
I don't know. Maybe it could be in black-white humans. The first place I go to, though, is more of a black-white, something a little bigger. Because, like, I think I would love to be able to combine Banewit Punisher with Archfiend of Ifnir.
Yeah, that really... Grind to Dust gets way better, too, if you're playing those cards together, right?
Oh, yeah. And if you drop Archfiend of Ifnir on 6, and then just get one cycle off before they can kill it, you've still marked everything for death, so the Grind to Dust will live up to its name. I think that's a exciting way to do it.
All right, so
way more appealing than Hour of Glory
for a similar cost. So here's one. I don't know if this is anywhere near constructed playable. Maybe let's finish up on this one. I went to a different pre-release, so I played in the Complete Strategist in the morning, but then Lian Ho was playing in one in the evening, and I just met him at a different store, and then we just battled our pre-release decks later. He played a card that I wouldn't have thought to play in my sealed deck, but it destroyed me. Overwhelming Splendor, 6 WW.
That card seems great to me.
Enchantment or a curse. Enchant player. Creatures enchanted player controls lose all abilities and have their base power and toughness 1/1. So it's kind of like a humility, but only targeting one player. Enchanted player can't activate abilities that aren't mana abilities or loyalty abilities. Like
namely vehicles, but also evolving wilds and stuff like that.
I was thinking more the evolving wild rat. So you think this card's great?
If you Overwhelming Splendor in some kind of... like, picture if you're just playing, like, Channeler Initiates and Servant of the Conduits, and you're playing some sort of a green-white deck. Mm-hmm. If you just put this out, how does your opponent win? Like, if you're just playing, like, a bunch of creatures, right?
I think that my question around it is really, how do you get it out? Because it costs 8.
A lot of mana, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think this is the kind of card that's just really worth it? We're going to make the investments to slow the game down so we can land this.
Maybe. It depends. There's also Eldrazi and stuff. There's some other pretty dope big things. But this thing is definitely in the discussion with some of the Eldrazi. I think that the Hour of Promise is an exciting way to do it. If you go turn 5 Hour of Promise, 6/7, untap, play your 8th land, that's Overwhelming Splendor right there. The toughest part about Overwhelming Splendor is that when you have Overwhelming Splendor, your opponent can still Ulamog it. Because Ulamog's cast trigger is not stopped by Overwhelming Splendor.
That's correct. I think that the actual toughest thing about Overwhelming Splendor is enchanting the correct player. Because this is a curse that's meant to enchant the opponent. But I think that most players are just going to put it in front of themselves.
I don't know, man. I don't think that's going to be the issue.
That's not going to be a big problem. All right. Well.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. But I think that if there's a problem, that's not what it ends up coming to. There is one more. There's one more I wanted to
bring it
to see your take on. Which it's not this, but Hour of Promise. By the way, I just think Hour of Promise is just so sick. I
had it in my sealed deck. So I spent a ton of time brewing Hour of Promise decks this weekend. I think that it's going to be so interesting, like just the decisions that people make in how to build decks, like how many deserts to play. Like I told you, I I found that interaction with the blue Millstone Desert, but quite by accident. Because I just wanted to have like Slain comes into play untapped. I can potentially get it with Shefa Monitor. I need to have 3 deserts in play to get my zombies. If I want to go that route instead of the shrine route. But it was effective for me. I think that card is great. I had a tendency to go for deserts, even when I could go for shrines and had Ulamog in my hand. Maybe obviously every game is different, but I'm not sure. I think that's going to be a challenge over time for me and anybody playing Hour of Promise to figure out.
So the card that I wanted to get to look at was Dream Stealer. Just 2 and a black, human wizard. 1/2 menace. When Dream Stealer deals combat damage to a player, that player discards that many cards, and it has Eternalize 4 black.
All right, so let's start it off, right? At 2 and a black for a 1/2 menace, he's like kind of hard to block. It's not impossible to block.
Yeah,
but
he's inconvenient to try to block.
He's tough, but then when he gets you, he is kind of Hypnotic Spectre, and that's just at his base power. Forget about even if you're buying him back from the graveyard. There are other ways to adjust his power, right? Like Blossoming Defenses or a piece of equipment. And I think I don't know. Like I'm a little hesitant because his casting cost is a little clunky, but there's a lot of promise to this, I think, potentially.
So what do you think about Dream Stealer with Appeal to Authority?
Well, that would be potentially insane, right? Like, that's just Mind Twist.
What about Dream Stealer with half of Claim to Fame? Obviously, it's, Claim can't get it back. It's not that. The Claim is the return target creature with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It doesn't work with the Dream Stealer. However, Fame, 1 in a red, target creature gets +2/+0 and haste until end of turn. So you can play Fame on this guy, and when you have 5 mana, and instantly get it back, or play him, and hit him, hit your opponent immediately. Well, or what about with the 1-cost 1/1 that you can tap to give a creature haste?
Well, so one of the things that's convenient about the cards
Trial of Zeal.
They all can go together because they're the same colors, right? So
I guess Cartouche Zeal, I should say.
But yeah, I think Claim to Fame seems pretty.
Claim to Fame is pretty exciting.
Yeah. I mean,
but you think here it's really just not enough?
Always. What?
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know. I think I just don't see it as being a very effective main deck card, just because it's. The prospects of tapping out for a 1/2 that's going to have minimal impact on the board is not appealing to me. Like, I spent all my playtest sessions this week just getting destroyed by Winding Constrictor draws, right? Like, if you have a snake on turn 2, what happens in the next 2 turns is way more impactful than probably what this guy can do.
That's fair.
Like, it's so forget about making them discard a card or even 4 cards, right? Like, they're putting so many counters on stuff, and you're taking a ton of damage, et cetera, et cetera.
They also they never make these kind of cards good. I don't know. This one, it's got a couple things going, like the whole being a human and just how many good enablers there are. But it would be a serious failing on their part if they let Dream Stealer actually be good.
There's a card that seems substantially better than Ophidian to me, and it's probably not going to see any play in Constructed.
Substantially?
Well,
substantially better than Ophidian?
I would say substantially better. Are you in disagreement with that assessment? That adverb?
So this is a Scroll Thief with upside, and it's a zombie.
Yeah, but I mean, its upside's pretty up. I mean, just relative to what Ophidian had going for it, it's up.
Ophidian had Counterspell and Forbid going for it. And Legacy's Allure. Yeah, no, this card, we'll see if it actually sees play. I'm going to try. It probably isn't that good, though. There's a lot of competition.
Yeah, I just
That's
think
just not what the zombies are into these days.
3 mana is... That's a lot right now. People are doing really, really heavy commitments at 3.
Yeah, I think that ones to watch for, I'm into De Giro. I'm into Nimble Obstructionist.
Oh, I love Nimble Obstructionist.
Yes. I'm into Hour of Promise. I'm into Hollow One. I'm into Appeal to Authority. Yeah, Nimble Obstructionist is just... That guy's just the gosh darn. It's standard. I'm not even talking about modern, because of course, right? Like, I think Nimble Obstructionist, people are sleeping on. Nimble Obstructionist is the truth.
I mean, it's everything to everyone, right?
It's also going to age well. You're going to want them for powered formats. And historically, sets that don't single sail very strongly, when there's a very frequent staple for powered formats in the set, those are the kind of, that's where Monastery Mentors come from. Now, this one's only a rare, not a mythic.
But it's so good. It's
Same with Snapcaster Mage and Fetchlands, though.
Yeah, but it's like similar to a Vendilion Click and then similar to a Dismiss or something. Also.
Interdict, Stifle, all that. Yeah. So yeah, I think Nimble Obstructionist in Standard is going to beat up on some Planeswalkers. Remember, it's not just the ultimate you can stop; it's any of their abilities. And then he gets in there and starts bashing them.
It's just going to beat up on some Planeswalkers because it has flying and flash.
So I think this card is excellent.
I think it's very good too. All right, so still tons. Actually, last one. What do you think of Torment of Hailfire? Any possibility on Torment of Hailfire?
10 out of 10 for style.
But substance, no?
I'm
Too
not
erratic?
Really I don't know, man. I think Torrent, it's like, what was your Black Cruel Ultimatum for 5 that you wanted so badly?
Though never saw any play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which one was that one?
I can't remember the name of it, but I remember.
This is that.
Yeah.
It's not like it's got potential, it's just not likely to be right because there's a dime a dozen. These things are a dime a dozen. There's so many of these things.
Yeah, I think if you have a huge advantage, it can bury the opponent. But I mean, starting with the huge advantage is a poor position to start
right.
Just from a perspective.
Like when I look at this card, I'm like, okay, where's the number where it starts getting good? Well, Torrent of Hailfire for 1 is not good. It's not good. Torrent of Hailfire for 2, still not good. Torrent of Hailfire for 3. The problem is that my opponent's playing extra cards in this meantime, right? So, it's tough because later in the game, they've got stuff to sacrifice. So you need that sweet spot of where you're, torrenting them enough that they would feel it for sacrificing land, but that it's still relevant. And the damage matters. And then also you need to be aggressive. And then also it doesn't work as well against people who have stuff like tokens and clues and all that.
Horrible against tokens, yeah.
So yeah, I'm not that into Torrent of Hailfire. But, I would love to just look somebody, for instance, I'm just sitting down against Yelger. We're just, we're playing to see who locks up, we're playing for, 11-0. Look him in the eye. Look him in the eye. Your god Pharaoh has returned. As I drop Torrent of Hailfire on him in the last round of draft.
You have a very vivid and precise, picture of how you're going to take out Yelger. I like it.
All right, man. This is going to be kind of an interesting set to watch because there aren't as many immediate, obvious, broken, problematic elements as some previous sets, and we just had another ban, so stuff's kind of up in the air. It's chaotic, but I think that from everything I've heard so far, there is some stuff to try. There's some stuff to explore. There's some stuff to work with before eventually settling on Grixis.
All right. We're Top Level Podcast. Thanks for listening. You can find us in all the places. For example, our website, iTunes, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon. So I'd like to thank Voltaire this week. Voltaire is
Voltaire,
one of our patrons. And, rock on this weekend with your Hour of Devastation.
Yeah. You don't want to take the full hour each round. You run up against time limit. But honestly, you can stretch it out. You can take many, 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 many hours of devastation as long as you keep getting those W's.
My sealed deck had both the White Hour and Hour of Promise.
Promise and Revelation.
Yeah, and in addition to the White Hour, I had Wrath of God. I got a Wrath of God.
Actual Wrath of God.
Actual Wrath of God. So, yeah. When was the last time we had actual Wrath of God in sealed and still went 1 and 3?
I just can't believe the Cruel Ultimatum isn't one of the invocations.
Yeah. Wow.
Isn't
that is a flavor fail.
Yeah. There's God. I don't want to talk about it, man.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.
All right. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Work so great. Tried to play dredge, chicks with jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game, the love, it kept me alive. Visions of better weather, light inside.